I would like to welcome on a very special guest here today. I mean, the president and CEO, and then the president and CEO, David Gilbert right here. I'll tell you what, this man is doing it all. The president and CEO of Destination Cleveland, and also the president and CEO of the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission. David, thank you so much for coming in today, man.
My pleasure, Austin. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you got 4 titles. Well, how do you find time in the day? 'Cause, it was so funny when I was talking to, it must have been your assistant. I was like, I'd love to get him on the next 3-4 weeks, something like that. And she's like, well, he has 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. on February 21st, and that's it. And I was just like, booked, done. That actually falls right into where we want to do this. But man, your day has to be ridiculous trying to manage all of this.
It's battling the calendar is sometimes one of the biggest challenges. But you just have to be very efficient, and the day is a lot of meetings, and you just gotta figure out how to make it all work. What times of the day work to get stuff done? What times are good for meetings? When honestly, I have to figure out what do I need?
Yeah.
And it changes all the time, but you got to try to keep yourself whole too.
Sure. I mean, give me a typical day. You said it sounds like you're an early riser.
Yeah.
And then what does the typical day look like for you? Like for today example, or just like a regular day, or even a hectic day? Or I'm assuming every day's hectic.
Yeah, it sounds crazy. I'm up at 4. I try to work out every day, and usually like working out from maybe 4:30 till maybe 5:45 is my normal time.
Yeah.
And then shower, get ready, and usually between like 6:30 and 7:30 or 8, depending on when first meeting is, breakfast meeting. That's sort of my time to do some quiet work, get organized for the day, get my task list done. And most days are from 7:30 or 8 until the end of the day, anywhere from 4 or more like 6 to 8, 10 different meetings.
Yeah.
And it's fine. It's all you just gotta to again be really efficient, have your stuff together, and then usually evenings or the next morning is when there's a lot of time for follow up from the meetings and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So, but I would tell you, it's fast paced, but I like it that way. Not every day, but most days, it's just what I thrive on.
Sure. I'm looking at you, and everything that you've been able to accomplish, which I'm really looking forward to getting in with. But from what we've been able to, and what I've known about you, what I've heard about you, is that you kind of move at a high level, but with ease, comfort, and kind of like a quiet confidence. Really, where does that kind of come from for you?
I don't know. I guess podcast is okay. The expression just get done. That to me is something I really live by. I mean, you have to be strategic. I'm really big on with the organizations being very focused on what your metrics are, what you want to accomplish. But at the end of the day, you got to move fast and get stuff done.
Yeah. And
strategy is critically important, but getting your hands dirty is also really important. I don't know if it's confidence. I've never really thought about it that way, but I do feel like if we go after something, if we start something, we're going to win.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't every time, but you have to have that attitude going in. And I guess if it is confidence, I don't know. It's hard for me to think of where it came from. It's just kind of how I'm wired. I don't want to go after something. There's a competitive nature to it. I don't want to go after something if we're not going to win. I love this city. I love competing for this city, and that honestly that makes it fun. I love the fact that we're a little bit of an underdog.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, which makes winning even more fun. I think it'd be interesting. I've had opportunities to do this kind of stuff in other cities. I mean, I'm from here. This is why I love doing it.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes doing it if I were doing this in a city that's a big growing city in a Nashville and a Houston and a Denver, I don't know if it'd be as much fun.
It's already set up for you.
Totally.
Right there.
Totally agree.
With Cleveland, with a lot of these things, I've been here since 2018, and when we heard we were getting the draft, the NBA All-Star game, coming up, the women's Final Four, is like, wow, what's going on in Cleveland here? It's pretty incredible. I love that you said you just get shit done, because I literally wrote that in my notes. I go, you get shit done. and you know, that is a mentality that you have to have, especially in what you're doing, especially at the high level of what it is. You know, that energy, that vision, where does that stem from? Where does that come from? Is that like is that a childhood thing, or is this something that you've kind of developed over your career? Because it is, like, you're a professional CEO of getting shit done.
Well, I mean, I guess thinking back, even like high school, college, I just tended to gravitate to being like president of the clubs and the things that I was involved in.
You're an overachiever. Look at you.
I don't know about that. I just, it's just funny looking back. I don't know. I don't know where it came from, but it was just probably always part of who I was.
Yeah.
And I will say, I think that I enjoy winning.
Yeah.
And what I love is, I think, looking back, the stuff most have always been involved in, it's not about winning for me personally. You know, what I do is it's for this community, which also makes it easier to ask for help.
Yeah.
I mean, you also have to be humble enough so you're not going to get stuck. It's not, you know, winning is not because of me. I mean, all this trite stuff about great teams is so 100% true. And I feel like I've been able to maybe identify great people to be around, and they identify great people to be around them. So on the staffs of the organizations, but also the boards of the organizations, other people, other partners in the community. And one thing I found is people love helping Cleveland. They love helping their own town. And so that's not a hard ask. It's not a hard ask to get people to be involved in something that they're really passionate about. And I think that when we have the success, it's about sort of bringing the community to bear better than other places. And so maybe it's a little more of being sort of a conductor of an orchestra than just a player. And you know, maybe what I've been, you know, become good at is identifying just good people to be around me, and that are willing to jump in and go all out to help this community.
Yeah, I love that analogy. That's something that Steve Jobs would always talk about, is that he's not the first chair, he's the conductor, and he plays the orchestra. You know, and it takes a very specific skill set in order to play the orchestra. But, you know, your orchestra, of course, is Cleveland, something that I think that's ultimately where your drive, your passion, your competitiveness comes from for the city, to get these great events, to make sure that it's on a pedestal, putting its best foot forward. Where did that love come from? With the little bit of a research that I've done about you, is that I heard that you got a job offer to, like, early in your career, to go to Pasadena to work for the Rose Bowl, which so many people, especially being in Cleveland, you know, I'm not from here, but it's very similar, of growing up in, you know, a Rust Belt town in Rockford, Illinois, and an underdog city, whole type of deal. If I would have gotten offered a job in California, I'd been like, absolutely, like, warm, like Rose Bowl, iconic. But you turned it down because you ultimately wanted to build something in Cleveland.
Yeah, it was probably a pivotal time. It was early in my career. I'd been back in Cleveland a couple of years. I had started working for an organization here called North Coast Harbor that I really liked. But I always had this itch to be involved in sports.
Yeah.
And especially sort of that nonprofit side of sports. I mean, there was something about bowl games. And this, again, you're talking 35... certainly 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And there weren't that many of them. There wasn't the.
I mean, now there's just the ridiculous, like the Cheez-It Bowl. You know,
exactly.
There's so many. Everyone has a Rose Bowl. Everyone has a bowl.
Yeah, I mean, this was back. There were maybe 10 or 12.
Yeah.
There were 4 of them in California, and I ended up, again, this was even before internet. So sending letters, calls. There were to the heads of the 4 bowl games, just trying to do some informational interviewing, and I ended up. Long story short, as I went out, I had a bunch of miles from a job I'd had, and I flew out there, and I ended up in 2 days lining up 4 informational interviews from the 4 college bowl games. 2 were in LA, one was in LA area, one was San Diego, and one was up in Fresno. And people were gracious to meet with me, and I ended up getting a job offer from the Rose Bowl ultimately. And it was a real pivotal time where I decided I wanted to build a career around Cleveland more so than sports. And I wasn't doing sports commission. This was 10 years before that. And it's sort of serendipitous how all that worked out. But it was just a conscious choice that I hadn't, probably the first time I thought in my mind, I really love Cleveland.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I did before I'd ever thought about it that way, but I realized I wanted to build more of a life and a career here and about this place, more so than chasing sports all over the place.
Sure. And, we're talking early 90s, in that area, maybe even late 80s. That was like now moving to Cleveland, people are like, oh, that makes sense, because it's built this great reputation over the past 20 years of being an up and coming town. But back then, it was the butt of every joke, every headline, the whole deal. And you still were like, I want to build something here. What was your vision then of what Cleveland could be, and what was the driving force behind being like, you know what, there might be a little stink here, but I'm going to try to, get the Febreze out and do whatever I can to be able to figure that out.
Hard to define. I was very lucky early in my career to get hooked on with a organization that doesn't exist anymore called North Coast Harbor, overseeing the downtown lakefront. And through some circumstances early in my career, I actually ran the organization. At 20, probably maybe 26.
Look at you.
And my boss had a terminal illness. In his last year, got me real involved in different parts of the organization than I was already doing. And the board asked me to be the interim director, and then they asked me to lead it. And that gave me a lot of exposure to how boards work, and working at a real young age. It had this board of all these big CEOs and the mayor at the time, all this stuff. And so, one, I guess I learned how to swim in those waters that I had no rights being in my mind. And sort of fake it till you make it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And maybe it was just early on being around all those people that were working hard. There were all these really powerful people that didn't need to be part of making Cleveland better. They were running their company. They could have just spent that time. I think I really learned to respect people who really put themselves out there, their time, their resources to help their community.
Yeah.
And
for the greater good.
100%.
Yeah.
And I got to be around them. It inspired me a lot. And I think that's what really, really got me going. I can't think of a time when I said, boy, this is the thing why I just love Cleveland. I grew up here. Huge sports fan. I remember going to all the games with my dad and my brother, and typical upbringing of a lot of kids. I mean, I remember all my old baseball cards of all the Indians players I loved and all that. But a lot of kids had that, and they didn't necessarily love Cleveland per se.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what it exactly is that ingrained it in me, but I'm glad it did.
Yeah.
And I love the deep-rooted nature of it here. What I love about it has continued to change. My wife's not from here. Met her in college, and then she moved here. And so we probably could have gone anywhere, but I've just always loved this place. And maybe it's just part of my nature to be, I consider myself a really loyal person. And so maybe I was loyal to the place I grew up in, and that was part of it. Good, bad, or indifferent, this was my place. This was the town that raised me. This was, my teams, my place, sort of warts and all. And I think over time you realize, boy, there's that much more satisfaction in saying, I want to make this place better.
Yeah. And there is something to be said about just Cleveland and wanting to get your hands dirty and do everything that you can. And, you could have gone into business and been super successful, but you wanted to do more of the civil work and being able to build it up. When you were started at the Greater Cleveland Sports Commission in 2000, and then did you ever dream that you'd be able to get, and then graduated in 2011 to also take on the Destination Cleveland? Coming in 2000, did you ever dream that you'd be able to get these unreal events that have been taken here? I mean, I'm sure you had a vision, but has it exceeded your vision, or have you not even gotten to quite what your vision has been.
You know, funny thing, I don't think we knew. You know, when Sports Commission started, it was a startup nonprofit.
Yeah.
There were two of us. When I
And before you get, I'm going to move this just a little closer to you.
Yeah. You know, I mean, it was a startup nonprofit. We had one big office. We had a couple Sam's Club tables. We got a couple phones, a copier, and a couple computers, and that was it.
Yeah.
And there was a first big event called the International Children's Games that we bid on. We were up in the Toronto area. It was taking place there. It had been mostly in Europe, sort of like a World Youth Olympics. It was just sort of right place, right time. I think they wanted to be in the U.S. We got a video from Mayor Mike White at the time, and we put together a bid. We'd only been around. It was in our first year of existence, and the event it was in 2004, and they gave it to us. They gave it 2003 to a city in Austria, and then 2004 to Cleveland. I remember we were driving back. This guy named Rob Marin. It's only the two of us on staff, and we looked at each other like, "What did we just get ourselves into?" Like we had to plan like truly a youth Olympics. I mean, there were 20 or so sports.
Yeah.
We had to recruit, and this is before internet. Like how, people from all over the world. We had to recruit them, run it. We had to raise well over $1 million, and this was a small organization. Jeez. And ultimately, we did it.
Yeah.
And I think it just gave a lot of that confidence of, man, there's nothing we can't do. So I don't know if it was, Austin, if it was saying, oh, we want to get the draft here, we want to get NBA All-Star, we want to get. I think it was just what's the next big thing we can get.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a doubt in our minds that we wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
It was, let's figure out how we get it, and then when we get it, let's figure out how we make it happen. And again, thankfully, we had a great board at the start. Learned how to tap into the community. A lot of smaller events along the way. I think we had a very entrepreneurial mindset. How we put together some early deals with some Olympic governing bodies. We had this big U.S. Gymnastics Championships here in '02. That was probably our first big event, and we created a financial deal with them unlike anything they had ever done, where they took on a lot of the skin in the game. They ultimately made more money, but we weren't in a position to write them a check, which was how they did it. Well, Cleveland, if you give us $250,000, we'll give you the event. And so we don't have that money, but here's things we'll do for you, and we'll guarantee you some of that, and the rest. Ultimately, they made more money, but we had to go out and really hustle to sell the tickets and get the sponsorship, and we had lots of media that were helpful to us in getting things involved or getting things done. And more was I love the fact it was very entrepreneurial. We just figured it out.
Yeah.
And it was no different than starting a small business. We looked and said, how do we didn't really look so much at how do other people do it. We said, well, we knew our goal was to provide more services than any other city in the country. We saw that was something missing when we went out and talked to people in the Olympic world and NCAA. Back then, it was, well, people write us a check, we bring our event. And we said, but what they were missing were partners. Mm-hmm. So we're headquartered in Colorado Springs, we're in Indianapolis, wherever we are. And when we bring our events to a community, it's not easy because we always take the show on the road. And so we said, well, we can truly be your partner. And that's always been our focus. But at the end of the day, we had to figure it out.
Yeah.
And looking back, that's what's made it fun. And I think that's still how we do it.
Yeah.
I think we still have that same basic business model. We test it. It still is at the core of why we're successful. We're hosting 17 national events this year, by far our biggest year. Jeez. And I can tell you, every one of them, we are some sort of management and financial partner in the event. Mm-hmm. And a big part of the reason many of these people choose Cleveland to host their events is they have to like Cleveland. Cleveland has to work, but it's because our organization does things for them above and beyond what other communities will do. And our job is to make them more successful.
Sure. Yeah. So I want to know how, just to name like the biggest ones, the RNC, MLB All-Star Game, NBA All-Star Game, NFL Draft. Now we got the Women's Final Four. Maybe pick one specific example or one of those events. How do you get them? Like what's the process through this? What's the initial thing? And then to not getting too much in the weeds, but till you sign the contract to where, yep, this is going to be hosted here.
Yep. You know, they're all a little different. What I will say is, and I'll give you one or two examples, but at the core, every event, there is not an event that we have hosted or will host, and it's well over 200, where it wasn't a competition with other cities around the country, sometimes around the world.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're competing against 2 or 3 other cities. Sometimes we're competing against 20 other cities.
Yeah.
They're all a little different.
And maybe a few other cities that have a little bit more sex appeal potentially.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah.
You know, when we're up against, Nashville hosts a lot of events, or we have a real strong competitive set. There's probably, I would say, a dozen cities that we most compete with all the time. And there are some, when you're talking about, warm Tampa or Nashville, or some people say, wow, that's just a cool warm weather city.
Yeah.
And that is what it is. We're not all of a sudden going to have beautiful weather in the winter. Or there are certain facilities where we do really well, certain facilities we don't have. You play the cards you're dealt, and you try to win with those cards. And sometimes, we're not going to host a warm weather event in February.
Yeah.
So we just don't even go after those.
Sure.
But I'll give you two examples that are taking place this year, 2 really big events. Women's Final Four.
Yeah.
That event was awarded to Cleveland in 2018, so 6 years ago. We spent a year, and that one was a very specific formal bid process by the NCAA, where they were selecting 4 cities. I don't remember which 4 years. I think 18. I want to say it was 22 through 25, but they were picking 4, and they had, if I remember, it's around 20 cities. And ultimately, there was a final 8, I believe, that presented at a women's basketball committee meeting down, I think it was in Orlando, and we were allowed 4 representatives. But the whole process was about a year long, and it started with a very formal bid. You have to come up with a budget. And what they do is, in this case, we ultimately had to raise about $2.5 million to put on the Women's Final Four coming up here in a couple of months. And it's not that you write a check to the NCAA, but they have in their bid specs, here's what the host committee will provide for the tournament. And it's free facilities, it's signage, it's feeding their media, it's all kinds of stuff. And so we had to put together a budget of what we expected it to cost in Cleveland. And so that's certainly a part of it. It's a very, very thick bid document. We had a lot of things of what we will do above and beyond what they ask. Part of this, we talk a lot about internally reading between the lines. So a lot of these places, a lot of these entities who own these events will tell you, here's what we need. We want to know, what they don't often tell you is, how do they measure success? And that's not really necessarily in their bid. We want to know, in the back of their minds, how are they going to pick a city? What are the hot buttons? Some of these things are we call them check the box issues. Do you have the right facilities?
Sure.
Things you can promise us. Our job is to go above and beyond. And so we need to dig really deep and find out, what is it that really makes that organization tick? When they walk away after the event, how are they going to judge success? What can we then, as an organization and as a community, put on the table that maybe others can't or won't go as deep?
Sure.
Whether it's certain types of community programming or marketing and media or staff help, there's all kinds of things, some combination of those. And so this was a year-long process of multiple site visits, of refining the bids, of going down and giving presentations, and then ultimately we found out that we were awarded. I mean, I'm giving a Cliff Notes version.
Yeah.
Some are much smaller, but there's another one we're hosting this summer, an event called the Pan Am Masters Games. Sort of the World Masters Olympics. So this is 24. We were awarded the event. I first met the person who, the organization owns is called the International Masters Games Association. They're tied to the International Olympic Committee, headquartered in Lausanne, Switzerland. The board is, interestingly, most people on their board are people that are on the either CEOs or on the boards of other Olympic federations. And how it started was they conglomerated a lot of their masters championships into one big every 4-year event. Now they do it every year. So 9 years ago, I was at an event.
This started 9 years ago?
9 years ago.
Oh my God.
I was part of a board of this sort of world Youth Olympics. I was out of the country at an event. Somebody knew what I did, and he said, David, come here. You want to meet this guy? His name's Jens Holm, lives in Switzerland. And he said he runs international masters games. You ought to think about bringing that to Cleveland.
Yeah.
And it turns out like 8 or 10 months later, they were holding this event that takes the Pan Am version in Vancouver. So I went up to Vancouver during the event and met all the people involved. We started having a long conversation. We flew their team out to Cleveland, showed them Cleveland. We put in a bid, and we lost the bid for 2020 to Rio.
Okay.
It was going to take place somewhere in the Americas. And it's a big risk in putting on this event, still is. We have a lot riding on how many athletes sign up because we put a lot of money out to put it on, and we get the registration fees back. And so we lost. The first time we lost. The event in Rio never happened because of COVID.
Yeah, okay.
It was pushed to 21, then it was pushed to 22, never happened. We bid out on it again, and we were awarded 4 years ago the event for 24.
Yeah.
And now it's coming up this summer. And if all goes the way we expect, we're going to have somewhere 8,000 to 10,000 athletes from 60, 70 countries. Biggest international gathering in the city's history. We'll have probably 20,000 people in town for a week. The event will bring probably $30 million plus in the local community, and enormous undertaking. Our staff, our normal staff is about 15 people. We have 10 extra people already full-time just for this event. But it shows we started this 9 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was just a thought
unreal.
of, we can bring this to Cleveland.
Yeah.
And we're looking at some things now for 2029, 2030. And you always have to be looking out. You know, by the time an event happens, you know, for some of us, we're already thinking 2, 3, 4, 5 years out.
Jeez. You know, I thought I was doing good by scheduling my workout for Friday. You know, that's about how far I'm thinking out these days. But, you know, so when you finally are awarded a big event like this, when you finally sign, is it an, oh crap, now I got to put this on moment? Does the pressure come over you?
Yes.
Yeah.
The answer is absolutely, especially because events like Pan Am Masters, we have a lot financially riding on, you know, we're a small nonprofit. We take the risk on behalf of the community. You know, if we lose $500,000 or $1 million, look, the community wins either way. That's why we're in it. But if we lose that kind of money, we're in big trouble. Ultimately, we'd love to make a little money. We're a nonprofit. It doesn't mean we want to lose money. It's just, it's our, you know, our business model is that our metrics are all about money for the community. But I would say it's that oh crap moment. So you celebrate, it's the oh crap moment, but it's sort of like, to me, that's when you focus. Say, okay, we got a job to do.
Yeah.
And
get it done.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Like you can't pat yourself on the back. That's for after the event. When it's been successful, then you can pat yourself on the back. Until then, like, we don't celebrate a lot when we get a bid. That's you know, for us, because we're a full service organization, not just a sales organization. Most of our work happens once the event is awarded to Cleveland.
You know, that's what I was going to ask. What takes more work, coming up with the bid and getting one of these events, or putting it on?
In most cases, it's the latter, especially for the big events where you have an enormous amount of work, a lot of money you probably have to raise. A lot of times there's just a lot of you're under pressure because you're taking risk. You're taking risk on behalf of the community, but you're risking the dollars of the organization and the people who work there to do something great for the community. And I think we've been really successful because we're willing to take risks, because we have a board that promotes it. You know, it's a lot of C-level people in big companies in Cleveland. They know about business and taking risk. It's measured risk. I mean, they're also really good at helping us guide, there's a lot of events we simply don't go after. Yeah. Or you know, we get close to the finish line and we say, I don't think we can pull it off. There's too much risk there for the organization. We are looking at we're evaluating a bid right now to host the Special Olympics USA Games for 2030.
Wow.
Would be by far the most money we'll have ever had to raise. And there's only so much risk we can take on. And we have sort of a way we think we can go about getting it, but we're spending the next 9 months simply putting together the bid and evaluating it. And we may pull out.
Yeah.
We may say, we just can't do it. We've only identified so much money we think we can raise. We can't jeopardize the organization. But it would be so unbelievable for what that event is, besides big event, big economic impact. Having gone to see, it's only once every 4 years. It's in Minneapolis in 26. It was in Orlando in 22 at Disney Wide World of Sports. It will be, I think, in 30 years of the organization at that point, probably the most gratifying event this community will have hosted.
Yeah.
And will leave such a long-term lasting impact beyond just the economic impact. But we don't know whether we're going to bid on it.
Sure.
Our goal is that yes, we will, and that yes, we'll win. But there are times we're going to spend a lot of time and energy where the decision might be we're just not going to go after it.
Yeah. What was an event that in your heart you're like, I want this so bad, but then the numbers weren't right, it didn't make sense, and you had to pull out?
You know, it's hard for me to think of one. It hasn't happened that often.
Mm-hmm.
And we almost made that decision with Pan Am Masters Games. We really felt that we're the first city in the U.S. ever to host it.
Wow.
And it's been going on for 30 years. It takes place every year somewhere around the world, and we really wanted that. And there was one point where we actually, when we had the Rio one, that we pulled out. Our executive committee said, we just don't see how financially this makes sense from a risk standpoint.
Yeah.
We finally figured it out. We probably 6 months later, we negotiated a whole different kind of deal with them than they had ever done. And we ended up, of course, losing to Rio, and we were pretty disappointed. There was a time when we went after the Special Olympics World Games. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those where, for a lot of reasons, this was a long time ago, the event took place in 2007. We were bidding on it in 2004, a long time ago. Or it was 2008. And ultimately, Athens, Greece came in at the last minute, and they weren't even in the finalists. They came in, and the Special Olympics folks out of D.C. were just enamored with the fact that ancient Olympia wanted to host this event. And then you had this big financial crisis in 2008 in Greece. They did the event, not, from what I understand, not very well. It just, they didn't really have the money, and they were supposed to host other couple big post-Olympic events that they had to cancel because they just couldn't take on the financial risk. And chances are we would have been in big trouble because we'd have been trying to raise money during this whole financial crisis. So sometimes things happen and you don't get it and you're disappointed, and you find out it was for the right reason. Sure.
Looking back, how big of a game changer was 2016?
Huge.
And for, everything that took place that year, was that kind of it seemed to be the tipping point nationally where people started to look at Cleveland a little bit different. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Or maybe they were starting to?
I would say yes. I'll tell you where I think it was a bigger difference.
Yeah.
I think Clevelanders started looking at their own community differently.
And which is important,
Yeah.
and a huge distinction.
Absolutely. And we've done all this research on it through Destination Cleveland of what Clevelanders think of their own community. Would they recommend Cleveland as a place to visit to their friends and family? And we did our first research back in 2013. And the number was dismally low. It was 36% of people in Northeast Ohio said they would recommend Cleveland as a place to visit with friends and family.
Wow.
In our peer markets, we also did the research in Allegheny County for Pittsburgh, and in Detroit, we did in Columbus. And most of them were in the high 50s, low 60s. Mm-hmm. And we said, this is a big business problem.
Yeah.
Because people now starting in 2013, people were getting their information of where to visit by then through social media. Now it was no longer travel magazines and junk like that.
Yeah.
And so if locals were telling their friends and family, I'm not going to come visit. So we started working on that issue. And I think where we saw a huge change was 2016. Some of it we think was part of our work in getting Clevelanders to think about what they loved about Cleveland. But that year, this community took such pride in hosting a political convention, and it went off exceedingly well. That was a huge risk. And then, of course, Cavs winning the championship, and Indians being in the World Series. And it just felt like we got so much national attention. I think locally, Clevelanders saw that and were proud of all that stuff. And I do think it was a little bit of a shift in mentality of wow, if all these other people are saying good things about our city,
Why aren't we?
right?
Yeah.
And we saw a dramatic shift where now we're generally well into the 80 percentile, 80s percent of people who say they would recommend Cleveland. Now we way over index in sort of that civic pride.
Sure.
And look, it's one of those, it's always been one of those cities where, okay, I can say a joke about my own city, you'd better not.
Yeah.
And
It's like the little brother. I could beat up my little brother, but you absolutely
exactly
cannot.
right.
Yeah.
And so I think Clevelanders have always been very protective of their own city. But there was something about 16 that I think had a real change of Clevelanders actually really starting to take strong pride in their own city. And you are right. I think a change in that perception. And I also think every year that passes, is further and further from the generations that remember when the river burned, that remember the 60s and 70s when, we were that mother-in-law joke of cities that, there were lots of cities all over the Great Lakes that were going through the same thing. Pittsburgh and Detroit and Cleveland and Buffalo and on and on and on. Where we were the sixth largest city in the U.S. We were successful. We were wealthy. It was sort of dirty industry money, but that's what this country was built on.
Absolutely.
And when that started to get offshored and our economy tanked, Cleveland just happened to be the city that everybody joked about. But now, probably anybody under, certainly into their 40s who comes here, it's not relevant. They don't remember it. They don't get it. They see what Cleveland is today. Now, part of what Cleveland is, the cool part of Cleveland is that little bit of grittiness.
Yeah.
Like, it's great that we
like a little rust on our
no
stuff,
doubt. If you want just shiny and new, we're not the city for you, and that's okay. But if you like some shiny and new with some cool grittiness to it, we're the place. We're not perfect, and we like it that way. And so I also think that stuff gets a little easier every year because, those jokes just don't resonate anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I had the cool opportunity, I got married here. My wife's from here. And then, I'm from Northern Illinois, but it was such a fun opportunity to have a lot of friends and family that were from Wisconsin, that were from Rockford, Northern Illinois, in that area. Growing up in Northern Illinois, I never came to Cleveland. I would just go to Chicago. Why would I come to Cleveland from that area? So it was the first time that so many people had already had these preconceived notions coming into Cleveland, and then actually being here, they're like, wow, this is awesome. Like, that was the same mentality that I had as well of moving here. I remember people were like, like the river catches on fire there. I was like, oh my gosh, really? Well, come to find out, it hasn't happened in 55 years. But, but I was like thinking that everything was just going to be on fire, know? But there is, the opportunities that this place offers is unbelievable. And you guys have been able to not only bring up that and shake the stink, but capitalize on it. So, looking forward, what are some of the things that people can look forward to here in Cleveland, because now I think the stink has been shaken a little bit, and now there's actual pressure, because I feel like when you come here, before you didn't expect much, and now when this has become the reputation of what you're building, of now people expect something from Cleveland, and there becomes a little bit more pressure with that, or a different kind of pressure with that.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I think, to me, there's a couple really important things ahead. Look, we're a big city with big city problems like everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So, the issues that we have with, the downtown being less populated during the day after COVID, or safety, real issues, absolute real issues that our city is dealing with, our city hall is dealing with well, and it's every city. I think the big key for us, I see for the next generation, one thing is, I think the development of our waterfronts.
Yeah.
It's interesting because 30, 40, 50 years ago, people moved where the jobs were. Now, jobs and companies tend to follow where the talent is.
Yeah.
So people have a lot more freedom to go where they want to go because of remote work, which wasn't just a COVID thing. That just advanced it. So we sit on assets that set us apart. And what is now being dreamed of for the much broader development of the lakefront and the downtown lakefront, and we already have a lot of other great parts of the lakefront. What's being looked at the riverfront, we're going to see happen over the next 10 years is going to, I believe, dramatically change how people from the outside think of Cleveland and give us such an edge over so many of our peer cities of drawing people here.
Yeah.
People want to be by water. I mean, you look at waterfront developments everywhere.
Yeah.
They are absolutely game changing. We have ingredients that other cities simply don't have. We just haven't done a great job of taking advantage of it. And I think
which is also kind of the exciting part now.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I agree. We have this sort of this empty palette.
Yeah.
That it's, if we do it right, I think we absolutely have the ability to have the greatest lakefront in the entire Great Lakes, and it will draw people here. Yeah. And it's going to be something that is, for my kids and their kids, not necessarily for me, because this is 20 years from now when people are going to say, I'm moving to Cleveland because of that, and hopefully sooner than that. And then I think also, this relates to what we're doing with Destination Cleveland and Sports Commission. We're attracting a ton of people here, and that grows every year. And to the point of what we were talking about earlier, people come here who haven't been, whether it's for a big event, for a meeting, for a conference, to visit friends and family, to go to the Rock Hall, whatever it is. Yeah. And they say, wow, this is a really cool place. And we've done a lot of research that shows once they're here, if they've never been here, now they're much more open to considering Cleveland as a place to live and work. Yeah. Where they weren't before. And so you combine where we're going in terms of making it such a desirable place to be, to live, to work, even more than is now because of what we're going to do on our waterfronts. Couple that with the fact that we are every year continuing to grow faster than national average in terms of truly being a visitor destination, whether we think of ourselves as that or not, we are. And that combination is part of how a flywheel gets going of more and more people moving here. And that's what's going to be the game changer over the next couple decades.
Sure. And, a jackpot weekend that we're looking forward to, that I'm sure you're building up to right now. Obviously, the Final Four, we've talked about that. But then that's within the next day is the eclipse that's bringing in all these people. And then closing the eclipse day off with opening day. What are you building up for right now with the eclipse? And personally, I'm not a big science nerd. I'm not super excited about the eclipse. I think, okay, this is going to be great. But I am excited of what money is going to be generated here in Cleveland for the economy.
Yeah. Well, as you said, we have now in early April, Women's Final Four, which is going to be freaking bonkers. Yeah. I mean,
being a Hawkeye, I hope that
I didn't know you were a Hawkeye.
I'm a Hawkeye.
Oh man,
absolutely.
I hope your team is here.
Oh my God! If Iowa does not make the Final Four, I'm going to be so disappointed because I've never seen Caitlin Clark play, and I want to see her play here in Cleveland.
I have to tell you, and I'll get back to that weekend, but last year I was in Dallas, and they were in the Final Four. And that's the semifinal games, probably the most, and I've been to a lot of sporting events. That was the most exciting sporting event I have ever been to without my team in it. Yeah. Without Cavs, Indians, Browns, Buckeyes.
She's electric.
She is electric. And the fans follow the inside that arena was unbelievable. And it's going to be even more so this year. Women's basketball has risen so far. It will happen this year again, I guarantee, where secondary market tickets for the women's Final Four, whether she's in it or not, will be more expensive than men's Final Four. Wow. Because you have South Carolina, LSU, all these teams that are big stories. Hopefully she is the biggest story in college sports, period. And so that weekend is going to be ridiculous. The national media coverage, we're going to have 4 days, 20,000+ people here, finals on Sunday, the eclipse here Monday. And the eclipse, to your point, it's some narrow slice of people that follow it, but it's people from all over the world. Yeah. And people travel, hundreds of thousands of people travel from all over the world when there's an eclipse and they follow the path of totality. Well, we started thinking about 3 years ago, probably even 4 years ago, is how do we make Cleveland an epicenter for that? And so we started pulling together a lot of stakeholders in the community, the Science Center and NASA, all these folks, And now there's going to be the Rock Hall is doing a bunch of stuff, and we're marketing all around the country of if you're going to watch it somewhere, watch it here because there's so much to do. Yes, you can watch that 3 hours of the eclipse, but we've got all kinds of programming. Now, harder to get a hotel room because of Women's Final Four. We also hope a lot of people from Women's Final Four will stay. And, of course, Guardians opening day that day. And then this summer we have Pan Am Masters games. Again, 20,000 people will be in town from all over the world for a week or more. Everything's free. The public will be all over it. We can't say yet. We are really close to another very big announcement of another really big event this summer.
Come on, give it to us.
Can't tell
Breaking
you, but
news.
hopefully
break
soon.
some news.
Hopefully soon.
We need more listeners here. So break some news.
I'll call you the day before so you can help break it.
Let's go. That's how we do it, ladies and gentlemen.
But it's the great thing is, I mean, this is a huge year. This is a lot like 16.
Yeah.
But next year we have NCAA men's basketball first, second round. We got NCAA men's wrestling the year after, and we are still loaded up with big stuff. We have other big meetings and conventions coming here that more and more that we're pursuing our household name types of big meetings and conventions. And a lot people don't know, some engineering society that might bring in 3,000-4,000 people. We may not be reporting on it in the news, but it's a boatload of people here, the kind of people that see Cleveland with fresh eyes, and those things are coming every week. Mm-hmm. And it's great that we are being chosen. We are not just in the game in terms of bringing big events, big meetings, conventions here. We are a leading city in that. And it's cool because locals still, it's hard for them to think of it like that. Oh, wow, people really want to come here? Damn right they do. Yeah. And they're choosing Cleveland over other big places all the time now. And so I think, for us, it's not about the pinnacle is when X event is awarded to Cleveland. It's about how do we maintain a top level year in and year out. We're not going to have a year like 2024 every year. There just aren't that many big blockbuster events that exist that you can host all at one time. But if we can keep up year in and year out being one of those top 10 cities in the country every year of hosting major events, meetings, conventions, that's what we want. And we have to stay innovative. We have to stay ahead of our competition. We have to act like we are the underdog all the time. Because the minute we think we've made it, the minute we aren't hungry anymore, we're not going to stay on top.
Yeah, you got to keep that mentality. We just need to make sure that everyone continues to have a taste for a good beer and pierogies.
Yes, sir.
as we're ended up here, I just want a few quick hitters for you. Yeah. Best advice you've ever gotten?
Best advice I've ever gotten. I think I wouldn't say it's advice, but it's something somebody mentioned when I got to Destination Cleveland. This was like 12 years ago, so it wasn't early in my career, but they say, there's a big difference between activity and progress.
I love that.
And we talk about that a lot. Like, you could have a place that's busy, it doesn't mean there's progress. Mm-hmm. And so you always have to be focused on how you're measuring your progress, and it helps you really stay focused.
Being someone who's clinically ADD, I need to remind myself of that very often. What is your dream event for Cleveland to hold?
Wow, I think we've hosted a lot of them. At the moment, I think Special Olympics for 2030 would be pretty damn cool. If we can figure it out, win it, pull it off, it would be it would be very gratifying and leave a huge legacy.
How hard are you pulling for the Browns to get a dome so that we can potentially hold a Super Bowl here?
I have mixed feelings.
Yeah.
And I would tell you, I think, I could say we'd win and lose either way. I think Browns staying on the lakefront is really important for the future lakefront development.
Yes.
It doesn't mean it can't happen if the Browns weren't there.
Yeah.
If they end up in Brook Park and they do build a dome, there's a lot to be said there too for other things that we could host, and like you said, it opens up. Don't know if we'd ever host a Super Bowl. I don't know if the NFL, how much they'll ever go back to cold weather cities dome or not. But it also opens up men's Final Four and all kinds of other stuff. So, I tend to look at it, whichever way they go, important Browns are remaining here. Important that we're going to have a newly renovated or new stadium. Important that I just tend to look at so you could look at positive and negatives either way.
Yeah.
I look at the positives. You gotta, either way there's win in it, and either way there's challenge, which we'll overcome. So I tend to look at it overall that whichever way they go, the community's going to win.
Yeah, I love that. Really good, polished political answer by Mr. David Gilbert. I'm just kidding. Most underrated thing to do in Cleveland?
Ooh, most underrated. I'm a big outdoors guy.
Yeah.
I think we have some of the best cycling anywhere in this country, and I've done a lot of cycling all over the country. Probably my favorite place is Edgewater Park.
Yeah.
It just, what an amazing place to hang out, and still people from out of town have I think that's one of the best city parks anywhere in this country. And maybe it's not underrated because people talk about it, but our metro parks are off the charts.
Yeah, Brian Zimmerman's done an amazing job. Yeah. Favorite Cleveland restaurant?
Favorite Cleveland restaurant? It changes.
You can throw out a few if you want.
Yeah, I happen to love Chagrin Falls.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not in
it's
the city, but there's some there. M Italian is one I just is to me is just a regular go-to. I just love Marble Room downtown. I just think the ambiance there you cannot recreate anywhere. I love Grumpy's in Tremont for a great breakfast. I guess if I had to pick one, it's Grumpy's.
Are you serious? Oh, I love Grumpy's.
I love a good breakfast place.
Yeah.
Just a joint. And that place that's been my go-to for a decade or more.
I'm right down the road. Whenever you're there, give me a call, man.
I love it.
Absolutely.
That's my go-to place.
I love it. Last question as we're finishing up here. You've been so integral to this city and the success and being able to spread the good news of Cleveland and build it up along the way, and then spread the good news of Cleveland. What are you most proud of looking back on what you've been able to accomplish and what your team's been able to accomplish since you've started, especially with the Cleveland Sports Commission back in 2000?
I think that, and again, I don't credit at all, all of this or don't know what portion has to do with what we've done, but to see the difference in the last 20 years of how Clevelanders think of their own city in general, to me that's game changing, because if we remained a woe is us place, it didn't matter what we do, we were never going to win. Never. Long term. And you have to go into anything with the attitude that you're going to win, or you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
And even if you don't, you need to have that attitude going in that whatever you're doing, you are going to win. And we didn't have that attitude. And I feel like now there is so much more of it. We still have a ways to go. But if the things that Sports Commission Destination Cleveland have done have helped to get Cleveland and Clevelanders there, to me that could be the biggest overall long-term impact, any more than one event, one meeting, one conference, one set of visitors we can point to. It's a collective of our own mindset in this community.
Love it. Yeah. Well, I love Cleveland. I'm staying in Cleveland.
I'm glad.
It's my forever home now.
That is good to hear.
Love it, absolutely. Never thought that an old boy from Rockford, Illinois would be living in Cleveland, but here I am.
Well, when you marry a girl from Cleveland, that's what happens.
And a girl from South Euclid, like yourself.
Really?
Yeah,
I love
how
it.
about that?
I love
a lot of connections there. David, anything else you want to get off your chest here?
No, just
where can people follow you?
I don't
Big
do a
LinkedIn
ton of
guy.
social media. LinkedIn is where I do if I try to post on LinkedIn. I'm on the other social media, but it's more to follow my friends and family than to put myself out there.
So don't follow them. Yeah.
I honestly, I know it sounds weird. I'm just not comfortable. I'm just not comfortable with talking about myself. LinkedIn, you could talk about the organizations.
Yeah.
You could talk about great things in the community, and it doesn't have to be about you. But I do love following other people.
Fantastic. David Gilbert, everyone. Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on, pal.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Absolutely.